Shalom. This is Hadassah Batsaiwan returning with the book of Revelation, and we are still in chapter 20, revised, and this is part 4 called Gog and Magog is Revealed. Now, before we get started on this study, I just want to say something briefly. Chapters 19 and onwards, 19, 20, 21, and 22. These 4 chapters in particular are very unique chapters in the sense that they discuss events that we know generically, but we don't know in detail how it will all play out. For example, life after death, the resurrection to life. We know good people go to heaven and bad people go to hell. That's the generic form of the knowledge of what we know, of what we understand. But there are nuances connected to those 2 places. And there's much more. We looked at that in part 3. All right? There's so much more that we need to understand. Our forefathers, before the last enslavement, this is before 70 AD, our forefathers would have understood these precepts because that's what they are. They would have understood them because Hamashiach spoke extensively about life after death. He spoke extensively about hell. As a matter of fact, one of his apostles said if it was even remotely possible to write down every single thing he talked about and all the miracles that he did, this world would not be able to contain the books written on his account or accounting those things which he said and did. And there were a lot more books than what we have in the Bible. A whole lot more books, not only from the apostles, but also too from the prophets. Many, many more books. So all we have is a mere superficial understanding of these precepts. All right. Now, the book of Revelation is called rightfully Revelation because we need revelation from Ruach HaKodesh in order to understand this book. All of the prophecies, we need revelation, especially this book, because this book deals with the judgments that are coming, the end times, and life after it is completed, when the judgments are completed. And it's quite murky wading through these particular scriptures. That's why people don't like to touch them. They may take out a verse here and a verse there, but to look at the full picture, to look at the big picture, you're not going to find too many people doing that because it's murky. And the only person who can give us clarity is Ruach HaKodesh. So now we're encountering Gog and Magog, and yes, again, we've been told Gog and Magog has to do with Russia and these other places. That's the generic understanding. Now we need to get into the revelation. Gog and Magog is a lot deeper than we think. All right? So let's get started. It's not a terribly long study, but it is packed with information. Let's look at Revelation chapter 20 revised, starting from verse 16, and then we're going to go on to verse 17. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle. The number is as the sand of the sea. So right here in verse 17, when we see nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, people assume that it has to do with a specific country or countries. But we'll see what Gog and Magog is referred to. Now we have arrived at the last war of Gog and Magog. The millennial reign of Hamashiach is completed, and the last Satan, Gadriel, is loosed from his prison. We will be looking at the war of Gog and Magog in great detail in the next few studies. Gadriel was able to gather up multitudes upon multitudes to gather together with him in this war. After 1,000 years of peace on the earth, there will be the increase of the populations on the earth again, both of the Gentile nations and those of the regathered righteous remnant of the tribes only, the tribes of Yashraal only. Why? Because don't forget, before the 1,000-year reign of Hamashiach, there is the resurrection to life for the brethren of Yashraal. Our brethren, our forefathers, reaching all the way back to Adam and Hawa, will be reigning with Hamashiach and be his ministers and his priests in his tabernacle for the 1,000 years and beyond. They're the only ones that will not be multiplying, because they will be as the angels. They fulfill their purposes while they were living on the earth. They died, and now they've resurrected to life, and they are like the angels. Only the regathered remnant of Yashraal, the 12 tribes, and the Gentile nations who will be left living on the earth after all these judgments. And the war of Armageddon, whoever is left of the Gentile nations, they will multiply again. And because it's 1,000 years, there will be a great number of people on the earth. All right? Bear this in mind. When the sons of Yaakov and his sons, his household, went to Goshen, there were 70 souls, including Yahusap and his 2 sons. When Yashraal, the 12 tribes, left Goshen, they were in the millions after 210 years. They were in the millions after 70 souls multiplied. All right? Now imagine after 1,000 years, and we are going to be more than 70 souls, the remnant of Yashraal. We're going to be more than 70 people. So imagine our numbers after 1,000 years. Plus the fact we will not see death. We're going to see that later on. The Gentiles, on the other hand, they're going to experience deaths like we see death today. People get old, they die. They get sick, they die. But they're still going to be multiplying on the earth. And it's going to be a great number of Gentiles living on the earth, as well as the 12 tribes of Yashraal. Even after living in peace, perfect peace and prosperity, many of these Gentile nations will still choose to follow Gadriel, to be in his army. Can you imagine? You living in a place where you don't have to pay rent, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have to buy food because there are no supermarkets, and there's no need to buy food. You grow your own or you trade with your neighbor. Everything is provided for free. There's no more misery as far as provocation and temptation because the devils are locked away for the 1,000 years. Satan is locked away, but his minions, they have been deactivated. They're in their own little holding prison. Can't move, can't speak, can't do anything. And you think that these Gentiles will be grateful for for the blessings that Allah Hayam has given to them? He gave them rain in its due season. Crops will grow abundantly. And all he wants from them is worship. They're to come to offer up their offerings once a year and no pagan worship. But what is going to happen and what we're going to see is that these Gentiles, they still have a sin nature. And that's going to be the way in which is going to cripple them. This is going to be their downfall. Because you have a sin nature. Yes, Satan comes and his minions, the unclean spirits, what have you, and they tempt you to sin. But they can only be successful in their temptations or provocations if your sin nature is ruling over you. But if you have dominion over your sin nature, there's no way that Satan can provoke you to sin or tempt you to sin. So there's a problem going on here. That these Gentiles, with their sin nature, they don't have the ones that joined with him, the multitudes upon multitudes that will ally with Gadriel, is because of this sin nature that they have refused to have control over, to bring into submission. All right? Let's think about two brothers here for a second. One called Habal, who's Abel, and the other one, Cain, who is Cain. Habal did what was right in the eyes of the Father. He offered up the best, whereas Cain did not. And when he realized that Allah Hayam received the offering from Habal, because he will cause fire to fall on the sacrifice, the offering, and that will show Allah Hayam's approval. But when the fire doesn't come for your offering, it shows that you're not approved. Your offering is not approved. And Cain, instead of checking himself, he got jealous. And that jealousy led to murder. And before it descended to such a dark place, Allah Hayam spoke to Cain and said to him, "Why are you so angry? Do you not know if you did it correctly that I would have accepted you?" He said, "Be careful because sin lies at the door." Because what was creeping into his heart was murder. And instead of Cain checking that sin at the door of his heart, he welcomed it. And what did he do? He killed his brother out of jealousy. And it is the same thing with these Gentile inhabitants, even though they're not being provoked, neither are they being tempted or will be tempted. The sin nature that is dominating them will lead them to be lustful, envious, and jealous. Let's read on. Because why? This is why they will choose to follow Gadriel. Because they'll be driven by greed and envy to take what is rightfully ours, to be theirs, and to try to destroy the people of Al-Hayam in the process. They are the ones, the last generation. All right? The last generation that would not understand who we are. But they will see us living large. Because we will be like prince and princesses. And they will be the ones to serve us. And that thought will creep into their minds, hey, why do we have to serve them? Why are they better than us? Why do they walk around with so much gold and precious jewels? Why? Why can't we live up there in that beautiful city? Why can't we come into the beautiful city? What makes them so special? We want what they have. We're entitled because we work hard for them. That's the sin nature. Without even provocation or temptation. So gladly, after the 1,000 years and Gadriel is released, they'll be more than happy to join up with his forces. More than happy. Because they've had enough. They want blood, they want to destroy, and they want to pillage. And especially after Gadriel is released, now the hordes of hell is breaking out to drive these ones that are already lusting and envious and jealous over us to now act on that seed. That seed now has blossomed overnight. Well, there are no nights now, but it has blossomed into murderous rage. So now they want what we have. And Al-Hayam is going to lead them right into the mountains. But we're going to come to that. Let's keep focused because I can go off track here. Let's stay focused. So now we're going to look at who or what is Gog and Magog. So let's go back to Yahad Zaka'ah, who is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1. And the word, actually not go back. You see, I've been working on Yahad Zaka'ah previously, so it feels like I'm going back to it. But let's look ahead because we will be starting the War of Gog and Magog, which is located in the prophetic book of Yahad Zaka'ah, chapters 38 and 39. So we're looking ahead, not going back. Wrong words. Chapter 38, verse 1. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against them, and say, Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. All right, these 3 verses is packed with a lot of information. And we cannot look at the words at face value, neither can we use a dictionary or concordance to try. Yes, that will help us to understand something of the genealogy, but there's revelation attached to these 3 verses. In fact, all of them, not just these 3. But we need to know the revelation. What Elohim is speaking through his prophet. He spoke in parables, he spoke in prophetically. Why? Because it's not given for everyone to understand. Only those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, and of course a heart to receive. Because you might see it and hear it, but you might nope, don't want to receive it. But you have to have a heart to receive it. And he knows who will have the heart to receive his truth. All right. We'll be looking at these verses again in the next few studies, but for now, we want to understand who or what Gog and Magog represent in the Bible. So this is the perfect time to look at Gog and Magog, because really and truly, when you look at these chapters, Yahaz chapter 38 and 39, they're quite lengthy. So if we do our baseline or lay the foundation of understanding, then once we get into those chapters, then we can just flow right through them. And one of the things that we need to look at carefully, and we're going to do it in this study, we're going to look at Gog and Magog. We have to understand that Elohim gives prophecy to be like a mystery. And the only way to unlock its meaning is by the revelation of Ruach HaKodesh. According to the wording of these verses, Gog is a chief prince. And not just an ordinary prince, but the head or principal, the chief of princes of Meshech and Tubal. And then you have, and Magog, is the land of Gog. So therefore, who or what is Gog? So if we understand Gog, then we will understand Magog. Gog is not in reference to a human chief prince, but rather a spirit that is a chief over the other evil spirits. So in this case, because we are speaking of Gog, we're speaking of an evil spirit, the chief over these evil spirits, over other evil spirits. It is a title given by Elohim to allow us to know that the prophecy is specifically set against a chief fallen angel, a Satan, one of the 5, who is over the other 4 Satans. So we do have one Satan who is currently over all the other Satans. We know one Satan is locked away. That's Azazel currently, today, until trumpet number 5, when he is released. All right? But you have 5 Satans who are over the fallen angels and also the Nephilim spirits. The way how they are organized is like an army. So over the 5 we have, you have the 5 Satans, but there's one that is over the 4. The one in the abyss right now, that's not the leader. He is just one of the Satans. So there's one that is over the 3 that are currently running this earth as I'm speaking. All right? So we have one Satan who is the chef, the chief, the top brass, the president. All right? And then below him, if Azazel was with him, it would be four Satans, and beneath them are the rest of the fallen angels, and beneath them will be the Nephilim spirits, the unclean spirits, the familiar spirits, whatever you want to call them. That's their organization. So this prophecy is set against that chief Satan. Let's see who he is. And seeing that this is the last war that will be set against the last Satan, then Gog is none other than Gadriel. Gog is Gadriel. But there's more. By now, all of the four of the Satans have been cast into the lake of fire. The first one that was cast into the lake of fire was the one that possessed the whore of Babylon. The other three, Hamashiach dealt with them. That was the one that possessed the beast empire, number 8, who is Azazel. It possessed the false prophet, and it also possessed the image of the beast. The three unclean spirits that came out like frogs, those were the three that came against Hamashiach in chapter 19 of Revelation. In the war of Armageddon, he dealt with those and cast them into the lake of fire. And now, Alahayam is going to deal with Gadriel. Why Gadriel? Because Gadriel was once called Lucifer, was once the anointed cherub. He was the one that brought about the chaos in heaven, causing a third of the angels to fall along with him. And not only did he do that to the heavenly host, but he caused the man and woman that Alahayam created to sin against him. So Alahayam he is going to deal with this Satan himself. And that's why he locked him away for 1,000 years. He could have just cast him into the lake of fire. But no, he wants to deal with him. And Alahayam, he uses these Satans and their unclean spirits, their minions, for his own plans and purposes. We're going to see that in a little while. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Satan, the Satans, the fallen angels, the unclean spirits, they're not a problem for him. Not a problem, never were a problem for him, because he uses them to carry out his plans and purposes, to bring about, to provoke his people to righteousness. So this will be the last war ever this earth is going to see. And Alahayam is going to really deal with these devils. So let's read on. Who else Gog is referring to? But Gadriel is just an evil spirit, a devil, who will need earthly agents to help him carry out his evil agendas. He is an evil spirit, but he does not have the arms and the legs to carry out the evil agendas. He puts the thoughts in the minds and hearts of people to get them to carry out the agendas. So yes, Gog is Gadriel, the evil spirit, the Satan. But he has, and that's the spiritual part of Gog, but there is an earthly component to Gog, which will be the people that he will use as his leaders. Let's read on. They're the ones that are going to help him bring together this mighty army. He will not be allowed to possess ever again, but he will use his other fallen angels and the Nephilim spirits to do the possessing for him. Oh yes, a lot of these people are going to be possessed with devils. That's why they're going to be they're going to be driven by these spirits, these evil spirits, to come into our land to try to destroy us. But Satan will be the driving force behind these people. This is the most effective way in which his evil agendas can be carried out without too much deliberations, as the human nature is so prone to be. We as people, we're like tossing, like we will have to think about, okay, if I do this, this may happen or that may happen. I'm not sure, Those are the thoughts that come into our heads. Even while he's tempting us, we are kind of like back and forth, because on one's, if you look at it, the cartoon imagery, you have an angel on one shoulder, you have the devil on the other shoulder. So the person now, they're like, okay, which way do I go? If I do this, I may get into trouble. If I don't do this, then maybe I'll be safe. But when you're possessed with the devil, you are not going to be deliberating about anything. You're just going to do it. You're just going to do it. All right? Therefore, when we think about Gog, we have to look at the spiritual aspect of Gog as well as the earthly component. The spiritual component of Gog will be Hashatan, who is called Gadriel. He will be the chief over the fallen angels and the Nephilim spirits that will be possessing these Gentile inhabitants to lead them to war against Yashrael. All right? And the earthly components will be his fleshly agents, the heathens. So Gog is, the spiritual aspect of Gog will be Gadriel, but the earthly component will be his fleshly agents. All right? Now, Gog will be his leaders that will lead the rest of the army. Because an army needs captains, generals, what have you, lieutenants. Because that's how they organize themselves, so that they can be on par with each other. They know which way to attack, who's going left, who's going right, the strategy. All right? That's all part of planning an army when you're planning an attack. So Gadriel will need leaders to help him to gather these people together and bring about his strategy to come and fight against Yashrael, to take down the city. So that's who Gog is. Gadriel, the evil spirit, and the earthly entities who will be his leaders over the army. All right? Now, there's a reason why I'm going carefully with this, because later on, when we start to look at Gog and Magog, we have to have this solidly planted in our minds. Who Gog is, who Magog is. So Gog, once again, Gadriel, the evil spirit, who has employed leaders to gather the Gentile people together and to pass on the evil agendas to them. All right, so we have that cleared. To understand more about Gog, we have now to look at Magog. Magog, although called the land of Gog, is not speaking literally of land as in a country, but rather a people. Knowing that Gadriel, who is Gog, is an evil spirit, and Gog also has the earthly component, which is the leadership, the evil leadership. Magog must be as he is, and it will be just as he is, made up of evil people. That's the earthly component, but it will also have a spiritual realm, right? The spiritual realm is called a principality over which he will rule. So that's why Allah Hayam called it a land, because he wants us to have an idea of territory. And that territory is inclusive of the spiritual realm. And we're going to see proof of this in the next slide. Don't worry, we're going to see proof of this. So his territory will be over a people who are submissive to him, as well as the spiritual realm that is connected, all right, to him. It's all evil. Although Gadriel will be locked away for a long time, yet evil will continue to exist in the hearts and minds of many of the Gentiles on the earth due to their sin nature. These Gentiles will be born after many generations. Sorry, let me read that again. These Gentiles that will be born after many generations will not know what their forefathers had gone through and why they had submitted to Allah Hayam. All right? They will not remember or even know about all the judgments, the trumpet judgments, the vial judgments, even the war of Armageddon. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't even know about that anymore. And here's the reason why. Another thing to consider will be the deaths still occurring throughout their generations for the 1,000 years. The forefathers that would have the knowledge of the judgments would have died a long time ago, as they will not have the gift of immortality as yet. That will be given to the Gentiles after this last war. And those that are righteous before Allah Hayam, they will receive the gift of immortality. Only the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al will live on since their regathering, and for the 1,000 years and forever. So when we are regathered, we're going to be regathered alive, and we'll get that will be the beginning of our life eternal. We will not ever see death, because we're going to cleanse ourselves in the sea of water to rid us of this sin nature and be purified. And then we're going to eat from the tree of life, giving us eternal life. We will live forever. Like it was with Matzorayim after several generations when they had forgotten all about Yahusap, who is Joseph, and what he did to preserve them, meaning Matzorayim, through the famine and wars. So will these ones, this final generation, after 1,000 years, will not even know why they must worship Allahayam and serve his people Yashraal. Like I said before, they're going to be filled with jealousy and envy, and they will be filled with lust. There will be growing resentment against him and his people until Gadriel is released from his prison and returned to his evil tactics of provocations and temptations. They're going to fall nicely in his lap. Many Gentiles will surrender to his wickedness because of what will already be hidden in their hearts and minds. They will join forces with him with the hope of annihilating us in order to take away what we will have. The Gentile inhabitants that will be dwelling on the earth at this point of time, speaking of those who will be affiliated with Gadriel after he is released from his abyss, will be Magog. All right? So Magog now. The earthly component of Magog will be the army. Not the leaders. The leaders, yes, they're part of the army, but they are considered Gog because they're the leaders carrying out the agendas. And here's the army that's being led by Gog. The Gentile, the evil Gentiles. And these are the ones going to be possessed with all kinds of spirits as well. Not all of the Gentiles will side with Gadriel. There will be a remnant who will remain faithful to Allahayam, and they will not be Magog. No, they will not. Now let's take a look at what the earth is going to be like in the future at this point of time. Now, because the earth will be one landmass again, like it was before the flood of Noah, who is Noah, boundaries that serve to determine the territories of countries will be permanently erased. This began, or it will begin, with the great earthquake of seal number 6, which caused all the continents and some islands to become knitted into one landmass. Allahayam called the territory of Gog, the chief prince Gadriel, Magog, for it will be made up of Gentiles, who were once the offspring of those who lived in particular countries before the general erase of their boundaries. So that's why you see the names Meshach and Tubal and a couple other names. But he's not saying specifically it's only them, but there's a reason why he calls out certain names. He wants us to have an idea who we're dealing with. These Gentile inhabitants will be the descendants of these people. But let's read on. But before we look at what the earth will be like before the 1,000-year reign of Hamashiach and afterwards, let us understand more about principalities, which are spiritual realms, and their princes, those who govern over these principalities. So just because you see the word prince does not necessarily mean that it's talking about royalty. They're talking about position, leadership, high position. All right? And Allahayam is speaking specifically of the spirits, whether an angel or Satan. All right? An archangel, that is, because archangels are called princes as well. Daniel chapter 10, verse 12. Then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the time that you did set your heart to understand and to chasten yourself before Alahayak, your Alahayam, your words were heard, and I am come for your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, 21 days, 3 weeks. The prince of Persia withstood this angel that came to Daniel to bring a reply to him, to bring revelation to him. But lo, Mayakaal, who is Michael, one of the chief princes, you see, Mayakaal is considered a chief prince because he's an archangel. He's one of the seven thunders. He came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. So let's read and see what these verses are saying to us. We see that Daniel's prophecy is showing us that Persia is a name given to a principality governed by a prince. So it's a spiritual realm governed by a spirit, an evil spirit, who is also a Satan. Whereas Mayakaal, as we know, he is an archangel, one of the seven thunders. He too is a prince, a chief prince over a principality called Yashraal. Therefore, when we think of a principality, we have to understand that it is to do with the spiritual power governing a spiritual realm and people. All right? The evil spirit over the spiritual realm, which is the principality of Persia, was the Satan that ruled through its empire. The empire is the earthly component made up of the people. And the Satan controlled and told them what to do. Evil enters into their minds and their hearts, and they do it. They act on it. So let's read that again. The evil spirit over the spiritual realm, or the principality of Persia, was the Satan that ruled through its empire, which is also its namesake. We call it Medes and Persia, but you can call it Persia as well. To make it powerful and a world-dominating earthly empire. This Satan had ruled through its earthly agents, who would be the leaders in this empire. They were his arms and feet, carrying out all of his evil agendas as he so directed them. The same will go for Gog. For Gadriel will have his earthly agents as well, his leaders over his people, the heathens, who will gather with him. Therefore, Gog is made up of the captains and other leaders of his great army led by Gadriel. Let's look at Daniel chapter 10 verse 19. And said, O man greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be unto you. Be strong, yea, be strong. And when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Adawan speak, for you have strengthened me. Then said he, Know you wherefore I come to you? Do you understand why I came to you? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. This is spiritual warfare here going on. He is not speaking of, when he speaks of a prince of Persia, he's not talking about an earthly prince. He's talking about a Satan. He has to go and fight with a Satan that governed Persia, the principality called Persia. Verse 21. But I will show you that which is noted in the scripture of truth. And there is none that holds with me in these things but Mayal-Kaal, your prince. And that's why he called him his prince, because Danayal was of the tribe of of Yahawada, the southern kingdom. All right? But Mayakaal is the chief prince over Yashraal, the 12 tribes. The spiritual realm, which is the principality, called by the very same name, as well as the people. Remember, there are two components here. You have the spiritual realm and you have the earthly realm. The earthly components will be the people, the land. All right? And the spiritual component will be the spiritual realm and the Satan or the angels of Allah Hayam. And they are in charge of the principalities that are connected to the earthly components. That's why they're called by the same name. You have Persia, you have Greece, you have the Romans, Rome, Babylon. When we study these prophecies in detail, we will begin to understand that Allah Hayam is truly in control, even over all the devils and their plans. They cannot perform their acts without his permission. And when we study this prophecy by Danayal, we see clearly that Allah Hayam is solely responsible for the overthrows of empires throughout the ages. When it was time for him to overthrow an empire, he sent his angel to fight against the prince, who was the Satan. And then the next Satan or prince stepped up and another empire ruled the earth. We know this to be true because the Persian Empire was overthrown by the Greeks, who then became a world-dominating empire, just like the prophecy we read before. Let's go back to that. Then he said to me, verse 20 of Danayal chapter 10. Then he said to me, know you wherefore I come unto you? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, because this Satan is being overthrown, because this empire is going to be destroyed. It's going to be conquered. Who is it going to be conquered by? Let's read on. And when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. So the prince of Grecia, which will be the Satan that governs the principality of Greece, will come and step up to be the next empire to rule the earth. Allah Hayam has everything under control. This continued with each subsequent empire where they were overthrown by another, until we have arrived at where we are today with the sixth world empire called the UN, the United Nations. Once we can understand the precepts of principalities and the princes which govern over them, then we will understand Gog and Magog. Let's look at Danayal chapter 12 verse 1. And at that time shall Mayakaal stand up, the great prince which stands for the children of your people. So Mayakaal is our chief prince. He's the one who governs over us, the people, our land, and the principality of Yashraal, which is the spiritual realm. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book, meaning the book of life. Many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. So even here in Daniel chapter 12, we're seeing what we spoke about before, about the resurrection to life. He said he called them sleeping. He didn't say dead. Because we go to sleep and we wake up either in paradise or we wake up in hell. And how you know you're going to make it to heaven when you see the angels coming when you're on your dying bed. And I've heard this first-hand experience, not my personal experience, but relatives. They see the angels coming to escort them to paradise. And then the other ones, they're screaming down the house. I've heard that too. Because the devils are coming to take them down to hell. In fact, no, the devils don't take. They're experiencing hell before they actually breathe their last breath. They're seeing and hearing the screams. All right? They're hearing it because that's where they're headed. And they can't do anything to change their hearts because all their life they've been living as pagans. And they refuse to allow the Most High to soften their hearts. And now on their dying bed, you think they got enough breath in their body and strength of mind to change their hearts? No. You've sealed your own fate. But your harsh living, your selfish lifestyle, your self-righteous self, your self-righteousness is better. Right? I remember one time I visited a relative in the hospital. And there was this gentleman. And long story short, especially at night, the man loved screaming. Screaming, screaming. And he's not screaming nice words either. No. Because he's being tormented. I've known of other people too. They're slowly dying, but they're getting visions of unclean spirits attacking them. I've experienced this from relatives. No, I shouldn't say I experienced this, but I've heard of these experiences firsthand, like straight from the person's mouth. They're seeing devils coming at them, unclean spirits. And even though they are still physically here, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. They're tormented even while they're dying. And why would Allah Hayam allow that? Because of the kind of lifestyle they led. Some of them were involved, and these are people that I've heard of. Some of them were involved in satanic worship. And they've given their allegiance to Satan while they were strong so that they can have wealth and properties and all kinds of good favor with a handshake. And now they're dying, and the soul that they've sold to the devil He's coming to collect. And you think Allah Hayam is going to intervene? No, no, no. It's different than if they didn't know. Allah Hayam will meet you where you're at. My son or daughter was ignorant of the truth, so I'm going to give them an opportunity to hear the gospel in a flash, giving them an opportunity to make a choice before they breathe their last breath. That's the mercy of Allah Hayam. He will not let a soul die until he presents his gospel to them. Not talking about the ones that have sold their souls. They made their decision a long time ago for wealth and position. But I'm talking about the ones who were ignorant of the truth to the time they were on their dying beds. All right. Let's read on. Verse 3. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. They're going to be like angels. That's what the stars are, angels. So the wise shall shine. That's the glory of Allah Hayam. Right? The brightness of the firmament. That's where he dwells. That's his glory. Filled with his glory, shining like a brilliant star. We may see with our naked eyes the events and the agendas being played out. But what we don't see are the angels that fight against these Satans and their hosts to bring about the plans of Allah Hayam. When a Satan has completed his duty according to the plans and purposes of Allah Hayam, then Allah Hayam will cause an overthrow. He will even use these same Satans against themselves. We see this occurring in the prophecies of Dana Ya'al and in the scriptures and in history. We see one empire conquering another and then another conquer that one until we reach today. That's all Allah Hayam. We see this occurring in the prophecies of Dana Ya'al and in the scriptures when world empires conquered each other in order to be the next empire to rule. So I did a study called The Beast of the Book of Revelation, and we went through the 8 empires, the past, the present, and the future. And you see how the first 4 were conquered. You had the Babylonian Empire was conquered by the Medes and Persian Empire, and the Medes and Persian Empire was conquered by the Greek Empire, and the Greek Empire was conquered by the Roman Empire, and that Roman Empire just transformed itself many different ways throughout the generations. That's why Dana Ya'al saw the 4th Empire to be the worst, because it knows how to camouflage itself, how to change itself. It goes on the ground and it comes back as something else. Okay. Now let us look at how the earth will be divided. Since there are no more countries or boundaries, and the reason why we're going to look at that is because in the study, and I know we have we had to go through about Gog and Magog, okay? We had to discuss Gog and Magog. And like I said, these 2 verses are packed full of information, as well as Yahazaka'al, chapter 38, verse 1 through to 3. Right? We're trying to understand all the implications through Revelation. All right? So in verse 17 of Revelation, chapter 20 revised, we talk about the 4 quarters of the earth. All right? So that's what we're addressing right now. We're addressing that portion of the scripture. So we're looking at how the earth will be divided. So there will be no more boundaries or countries. As Yashraal was once scattered to live amongst the heathen nations, to be assimilated into their customs and the like, so will the Gentile inhabitants be led into an exact assimilation. This assimilation will be with Yashraal, and it will be eternal. But not just yet, not just yet. From the time of the great earthquake in seal number 6, the devastation of this great earthquake caused the restructuring of the earth. And when I use the past tense, I'm using it in time of reading or going through the events. But it will cause great destruction and it will restructure the earth. All right? Gentiles will migrate to find food, shelter, and water. This migration and the lack of boundaries and countries will cause many of them to intermingle with each other, intermingle together, blurring nationalities. This will go on for generations until a generation will be born who will not even be able to determine their ancestral lineages. And this will occur in the last generation. They will live together and they will, just like what we see even today. Today you see it to some degree where people are now marrying other nations. They're mixing. You have mixed children because their parents are from two different nations. And then the children then will go and marry someone else from another nation. And so their children will also be mixed as well. And so on and so forth. So in this case, this is happening, this will happen at the end of the age because the way how the earth will be restructured, it will be easy for people now to migrate to wherever they want to go. All right? Except the land of Yashraal, but they'll be able to migrate. Okay, let's go back to here. I think I missed something here. Yeah. The earth during the 1,000-year reign of Hamashiach will be divided in this manner. Yashraal will greatly increase in size. It will be located central of the earth. So it's one landmass. Yashraal will be dead center and will reach as far north and as far south until you reach the sea on both ends. Therefore, Yashraal will divide the one landmass into three parts. So you have Yashraal in the middle, and then on the eastern side of Yashraal and on the western side of Yashraal. These two sides, the eastern side and the western side of Yashraal, will be divided in what we call, together we call quarters. But one side will have the north part. Let me read on, actually. These two sides will now be divided into quarters. And when I say quarters, I'm not talking about 4 parts on one side and 4 parts on the other side. No, it'll be 2 parts on one side and 2 parts on the other side. And that's where we get the word quarters from. But in some texts, in some prophecies, they're called parts. All right? So on the eastern side, the upper portion will be the north part, and the lower portion will be the south part or the south quarter. And on the western side will be the same division. You have the north portion or the north part or the north quarter, and then you have the lower part, which is called the south quarter. Therefore, the earth will be divided into quarters as described by Yahazakaal. The Gentiles will be able to travel through our land to reach either the eastern quarters or the western quarters, or to bring their offerings for the Feast of Tabernacles. However, they are not permitted in our city, Yarowashalam. So they're still able to pass through the land, because remember, some of them will be working in our land. Some will pass through to go to the other side. Much of the Gentile inhabitants remaining to populate the earth again during the millennial reign will become a huge melting pot of nationalities. Although a remnant will maintain their ancestral nationalities because they will choose to dwell in villages of their own people in the four quarters. So even today, we see this happening. We see, for example, people come from China, they go to America or Canada, and what they do is they don't want to assimilate into the Canadian culture, so they become their own village, their own people, their own community, and they call it Chinatown or what have you, where they maintain their culture, their nationality. Right? You see it with the Indian people as well. You see it with a lot of different cultures. When they go to a different land, they create their own community because they want to stay within their own community. They want to marry within their own community. All right? Now, the only difference with these ones that will maintain their ancestral nationalities, and I use the word nationalities because it will only be their nationality, how they look. But they will be worshippers of Allah. That's the only thing that will be different. They will look how they look throughout their generations, like a Chinese will remain looking Chinese throughout their generations, but they will be worshippers of Allah. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying Chinese I'm just using these nationalities as an example, okay? And because they choose to dwell with their own kind, they marry within their own kind. That's how they preserve their ancestral nationalities. They only marry their own kind. But there's a point to this, a very good point to this. So these ones will have their villages in the four quarters. All right? After the 1,000 years, when Gadriel is released from his prison, many Gentiles will join with him because of their evil desires to destroy Yashwa'al. So these Gentile nations collectively, the melting pot of nationalities, will become the great army called Magog, and also the principality of Gog. So Magog is the principality, and the earthly component will be the army controlled by Gog, who is Gadriel, the evil entity, the Satan, and his earthly components will be his leaders, the leadership that will carry out his arms and legs, that will carry out the agendas, bringing this army together and planning strategically how they're going to come and conquer or try to conquer Yashwa'al. All right? The remnant of the Gentiles preserved in their ancestral nationalities will be instructed by their forefathers about their identities throughout their generations. And this is the reason why they maintained the ancestral nationality. They maintained looking like who they were from 1,000 years ago. They will also instruct them about the history of their judgments that they had faced, the judgments of Allah that they had gone through, the choice that they had made to worship Allah and how he preserved them throughout his judgments on the earth. Now, if they were so careful to preserve their ancestral nationality, they will preserve their history. That's the point. Whereas the melting pot of nationalities, Magog, they could care less about their nationalities. They just want to marry whomever. So if they don't care about their ancestral nationalities, they're not going to care about the history either. And that's why history was lost with them until it reached the 1000th generation, who is so blurred you can't tell where they came from, the nationalities that they're all mixed up in or mixed up into, because they're going to just look like what? Mixed people. Wouldn't be able to tell if they had African in them or Chinese or Japanese or Caucasian, because it's going to be, by this time, perfectly blended. You know, when you take all the colors together and you mix it together, you know what color you come out? A brown. Right? All the colors are mixed up in together. But when you look at the final outcome of when you mix all those 8 colors together, you know what comes out? Brown. You can't see blue in there. You can't see any evidence of red. You can't see any evidence of any other color in there. All perfectly blended. And that's how these people are going to look. Perfectly blended by the 1000th generation. And not only will they be completely blended, but they will have no idea about the history of what their forefathers went through, especially the generation that came out of the Great Tribulation and the wrath of Allah Hayam and the war of Armageddon. They have no clues about that. Nothing. The only people that will secure their history are the ones that secure their ancestral nationalities. That's how it always works. That's how it always works. All right? And this will be the 1/6 of these Gentiles that Allah Hayam will reserve to be, let me read that again. This will be the 1/6 of these Gentiles that Allah Hayam will reserve to be the remnant that will serve him on the new earth. And you know what thought came into my mind? As I was studying this, when Allah Hayam reserved the animals to come in to the ark with Noah and his family, all the animals that came into the ark were the animals that he created. All right? He made them that way. The Nephilim spirits, they created their own hybrid species. Those were destroyed in the flood. The ones that they blended together with all kinds of genetics. Those were the ones that were lost in the flood, along with the Nephilim, the giants. But Allah Hayam preserved his own. He had them set apart, and then he brought them into the ark. And isn't this the same thing here? He reserved a remnant of the Gentiles, the ones who were careful to preserve themselves, and not only preserve themselves and their ancestral identity, ancestral nationality, but also their ancestral history and the worship of Allah Hayam. That's the most important part there. They knew why they were worshiping Allah Hayam. They were worshiping him because they remembered what their forefather, what their own father had told them, because his father and his father's father and his father's father's father, all the way back, passed on the information about the terrible judgments that came on the earth. And because they have chosen to worship Allah Hayam, they are seeing the blessings. They are living in the blessings of Allah Hayam. He is preserving them alive. So I'm telling you, my son, I'm telling you, my daughter, do not stray from the path of righteousness. It is the only way to live. Do not look to those foolish ones that are marrying each other and don't care about their own nationality. They don't care about the history of their own forefathers. Don't look to them. Don't marry them either. Because nothing good is going to come out of a marriage to a Gentile, to one of those people, though they're all Gentiles, to one of those people that don't care anything about their history. They're going to make you do the same thing too. And when you stop caring about your history, which is deeply rooted in Allah Hayam, you're going to lose your worship of Him. And you're going to become just like them, resentful of those people that are living in the great city. And we need to recognize that they are the chosen people of Allah Hayam. All right? That's what it's all about. Let's look at Yahad Zaka'al chapter 39 verse 1. All these we're going to come back when we go into these scriptures in the next few studies. Therefore, you son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, thus saith Yahweh Allah Hayam, behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn you back and leave but the sixth part of you, and will cause you to come up from the north parts. So you see here, sorry, let me read on. And will bring you upon the mountains of Yashraal. I tend to stop in the middle of a sentence because I have a comment, right? But here we see he's talking about the north parts. Yahad Zaka'al is speaking of the north parts. But in the book of Revelation, we see Yawachanan calls them the north quarters. Same thing. All right? The same thing. Now, the wording in verse 2 seems awkward, meaning the part that is highlighted here. But this is due to its translation into the English language. So you see here, not Yawachadan. Yahad Zaka'al says in verse 2, and I will turn you back and leave but the sixth part of you. Sounds a bit awkward, doesn't it? And will cause you to come up from the north parts and will bring you upon the mountains of Yashraal. So it sounds like all of them went out and he turned back a sixth. No, it's not that. That's not what it means. That's not what it means. Remember, this book, our Bible, has been translated many different times over. All right? So we have to discern and use perception and revelation to understand prophecy. And this sentence is no different. Now, if these people are this 1/6, which is a remnant, let's call it a remnant of the Gentile inhabitants that have chosen to dwell only amongst their own kind and be worshippers of Allah Hayam because of the history of their ancestors who told them, hey, this is what happened many years ago. But if you continue on like I have been living and how I've shown you, you all will be well with you. All right? So they are not going to side with these other Gentiles, the heathen ones. They don't even want to marry into them. They want nothing to do with them. So they're not going to leave and go anywhere with them. But what Allah Hayam is saying here is that he is going to leave a remnant of these Gentile inhabitants in the land where these ones came from. We know that Allah Hayam will reserve a remnant of the Gentiles to be his people. There are no other Gentiles on the earth except those living in the four quarters. If those who had wisely preserved the ancestral nationalities successfully, then it means that they would do the same when it comes to their history and the worship of Allah Hayam. These are the ones that Allah Hayam will welcome into his fold. And this will be the 1/6, the remnant. All right? These are the ones that he is going to call in and call them his people. It is not about Allah Hayam turning them back, for they will not join with Gadriel in the first place. But it is about him preserving them from his judgment of eternal destruction. They remain in their land to worship Allah Hayam. They reject Gadriel and his provocations and his temptations to join him. So let's look at the Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 20, verse 1. And this is from the Apocrypha. And the eternal mighty one said to me, Abraham, Abraham. And I said, Here I am. And he said to me, Look at the stars which are beneath you, and number them for me. And then tell me their number. And I said, How can I, if I'm just a man made of the dust of the earth? And he said to me, I will make your progeny a nation as large as the number of stars, and as powerful the power of the stars. And I will set these people a section for me as my own inheritance. Verse 4. They will be distinct from those of Azazel, and yet I will include Azazel in my house. And we know who Azazel is. Azazel is a fallen angel, a Satan, the one that is locked away in the abyss. And the reason why I have this here in red highlight is because this is incorrect. Let me read on. Azazel's name being used here is a misnomer. It's incorrect. For Azazel has been locked away for a very long time. Whereas Gadriel has been roaming this earth since the dawn of time. We have to be very careful when it comes to reading the Bible and those historical books. The books in the Apocrypha were translated by Gentiles. Therefore, expect such errors. And that word error is incorrect as well. So Azazel is not the correct title that should have been there. But we'll leave it at that. All right? What he wants us to understand is that those, when he says those of Azazel, he's not talking about the Nephilim spirits, the hybrid species, nothing. He's talking about those that are not his people. Gentiles. He calls them those of Azazel, those of Gadriel. Doesn't matter anyway which Satan it is. But they're the ones that he led away to worship the sun, the moon, and the stars and the hosts of heaven. It says that in the Bible. He has only one interest, and that is the 12 tribes of Yashrael. He chose them from the one grape, who is Abraham. Yet, because of his great mercy, he will include a remnant of the Gentiles. So this sentence here in verse 4, they will be distinct, meaning the progeny of Abraham will be different from those of Azazel, speaking of the Gentiles. So he calls them of Azazel because that's what they worship. Anyway, if you look at any nation on this earth, any nation, they worship the sun, the moon, the stars, they worship wood, they worship metal, they worship the works of their hands, they worship everything but Allah Hayam. The only people that have been selected to worship the true worship is Yashwa'al. And even though there are some of our brethren that are worshiping pagan gods, the ones that Al Hayam has chosen worship him. All the rest that doesn't worship him, that do not worship him, he called them of Gadriel, Azazel, whatever you want to call them. They're Gentiles. There are only two kinds of people. You have the 12 tribes of Yashrael who are worshippers of Allah Hayam. And then you have the Gentiles. And even within this group called the Gentiles, you have a lot of our brethren in there. A lot of them, because they're calling on pagan gods. They're calling on Ahaya. They're calling on Yeshua and Yahusha and Yahuwah and Yeshaya. Those are pagan gods that they're calling on. All right? But we're not going to get hung up over Azazel here. That's what the devils want us to do, to get hung up over a word. All we need to know that Allah Hayam is saying to us, I'm going to have your progeny, Abraham, I will multiply to make them like the stars of heaven and as powerful as my angels. Even more powerful than his angels, actually. And then you have a smaller group that came out of the Gentile nations. I'm going to make them my people too. He called them of Azazel, but it doesn't matter. He calling them, they're Gentiles. They're pagan. They were once pagan worshippers. And who were the pagan gods that they worship? These same fallen angels. All right, let's move on. Let us look now at these names mentioned, Meshach and Tubal. I know that we have been all led to believe that Magog is Russia, and other European countries combined. But we have to remember that we are dealing with prophecy. And as we have already looked at the fact who Magog is and Gog and Magog. So it's not as straightforward to say, oh, that's Russia and Gog is this other country. No, it's not that straightforward. It's not as straightforward as naming a few countries as we can today, because we're looking ahead to a time when there will be no more countries. We now have to adjust our perspective. Yes, Magog will still include those European countries as we believe, but we have to see the deeper significance as to why Allah Hayam called it the land of Magog. Magog is comprised of the spiritual realm, which is the principality, which is a principality, and the earthly massive army, that's Magog. There will be a clear divide between the remnant of the Gentiles who will be worshippers of Allah Hayam and the majority of the Gentiles who will be worshippers of Gadriel. Magog then is not a particular country as once believed. Remember, this massive army is going to be a melting pot of nationalities. That's why he called it Magog. He called it Magog for that purpose. One name, because they're going to be so mixed up in their genealogy, in their nationalities. Call it Magog. Meshach and Tubal help us to identify the origins of some of these Gentiles. Meshach was the son of Japheth, and Japheth was the son of Noah. Tubal was also a son of Japheth, and we know that all Europeans and Asians are the offspring of Japheth. Therefore, the territory of Gog, who is Gadriel, that will be lured into the mountains of Yashrael will be the heathen descendants of the once Gentile nations of Europe and Asia. All right? Do not forget that most of these Gentiles will be so amalgamated at this point of time after the 1,000 years of cohabitating, marrying each other, and procreating that they will no longer resemble a particular nation anymore. No, I'm going to say this as well because not all of the European nations and not all of the Asian nations will be involved in this melting pot, will be a part of this melting pot. You're gonna have a remnant of them that will not be a part of this melting pot. But generally speaking, it will be the two sons of Noah who will be mixed together to such a degree that they will no longer have any distinctive features to say, well, they're from this country, or their ancestors were from this other. No, you wouldn't be able to tell who they were, who they will be, or who they are. All right. Like I said, a melting pot of nationalities. That's why they will no longer resemble a particular nation anymore. Also, to note that these European and Asian descendants are not the only ones named to be a part of this massive army of Gadriel. There will also be Africans, the descendants of Ham, another son of Noah. We will encounter this later in the studies about the war of Gog and Magog. So, the two sons, Noah had three sons: Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Shem is where we descended from. All right? That's that first son of Noah. But what Allah is showing us is that these people, these Gentile nations, the ones that will be a melting pot of nationalities, their descendants, they will be the descendants, they will be the descendants of those who were from the sons of Noah, Japheth and Ham, Europeans, Asians, and Africans. Many of them, not all of them, all right? Many of them. Notice that this massive army of Gadriel will be coming from the north parts, which is now understood as we now know that the one landmass will be divided up in north and south parts, or also called quarters. Only the land where the 12 tribes will be living will not be divided into quarters. Later on, we see that after this final war, let me read that again. Later on, we'll see that after this final war, that Allah will rename the entire earth to be called Yashra'al, including the remnant of the righteous Gentiles, who he will also rename to be called Yashra'al. All right? The city in which the 12 tribes will be living in will be Yerushalayim. It is for this reason why Yawachanan saw the new earth, which will be renamed Yashra'al. So the whole earth now, after this war, after Allah has cleaned and gotten rid of all evil on this earth, and all that's left now are the righteous, the ones that now will be called by his name. And what is his name? Yahweh. All right. Yashraal has part of his name in there. We're called the upright of Alahayam. That's the name, the meaning of our name. So those of the Gentile nations, when he brings them into the fold, he cleans them up, removes their sin nature by getting them to wash in the sea of water. Then he gives them the tree of life, fruit from the tree of life to eat. Now they have eternal life, and he will give them our name, Yashra'al. So now the whole earth will be called Yashra'al, but they will still be dwelling in the north and south quarters, while we will be dwelling in the middle portion, which will be renamed Yarowashalam. And in Yarowashalam, it will be the one mountain that is left, which is called Sayawan, and upon Sayawan will be his tabernacle. It's going to be massive. Everything now is going to be on a grander scale and beautiful to behold. Let's look at Revelation chapter 21, verse 1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, Yochanan, saw the holy city, New Yarowashalam, coming down from Alahayam out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Now let's look at Revelation chapter 20, revised, verse 18. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about and the beloved city. And fire came down from Alahayam out of heaven and devoured them. Now this is the actual this is the war now of Gog and Magog. This is the war of Gog and Magog according to Yochanan in the book of Revelation. But we're going to look at a detailed description of this war through the prophecy of Yahazakaal coming up, chapter 38 and 39. All right, let's look at verse 19. And the devil that descended from them, descended. God. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. So not only is the beast and the false prophet speaking, these are the Satans. These are the Satans. All right? They are cast into the lake of fire, along too, yes, with those who made up the beast empire, right? And the false, the earthly agent that was the false prophet. But he's dealing here with the devil. So what we're looking at, the devil was cast into the lake of fire where his other devils are. And not only the devils are there, but the earthly agents that made up their entities are also there. And shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And you don't want to be in that place with them. No way. We have to be careful when we read these words in the red highlight. At first glance, it looks as though these evil armies of Gadriel will be surrounding the city of Yerushalayim. And that's the reason why people, when they read these prophecies, because they don't have revelation, they're led astray into error. They're led astray into error. There's no way that they'll be able to compass our beloved city. Alahayam will not allow them to come down from the mountains to surround our city. Well, our city is not in a valley, it's on a mountain. Or well, our city it has the mountain in the middle, which is Mount Sayawan, and the surrounding area all around. But they're coming from the north parts, and they're coming into the mountains of Yashraal. Some of them are going to find their way down into the valley. But that's where Alahayam is going to destroy them, so they're not going to get a chance to surround our city. All right. He's if you read your Yahazakaal carefully, you're going to see that he destroys them in the mountains and in the plain, the valley. They don't get a chance to surround the city. All right? And we're not coming out to fight them. So we're not going to be camping out anywhere as like we did when we came out with Hamashiach. Remember, Hamashiach is with us. He is dwelling in the city with us. And when it was his war to fight, he brought us out to witness him destroy our enemies. But what is going to happen with our people, because Allah Hayam wants us to witness him destroying these people. So we are going to be there to see all these things happening. But they're not going to be able to come near us. No, we're not. They're not going to be able to come near our city or near us. So we have to be careful of the wording, because a lot of people thought, oh, prophecy, they got to be surrounded by the enemies and this and this and that, and then this will happen. No. Don't let one word throw you off. Remember, this book has passed through many hands. And some of these hands that our manual have passed through are devils. Yes, they can only change a little bit here and a little bit there according to the permission of Allah Hayam, but Allah Hayam permitted it because we need to come to him to get the revelation. All right? So that's not going to be happening. They're going to be coming with the intention to try to surround us so that they can conquer us. Because there are going to be so many of them. But they're going to be destroyed in the mountains. All right? But it is made clear when we look at the prophecy of Allah Hayam through the prophet Yahazakaal, which tells us that this war will be fought in the mountains of Yashwa'al. But it will be Yahweh Allah Hayam that will fight against these heathens. Yashwa'al will dwell safely in their land, completely protected, as they will be dwelling in the glory of Allah Hayam, and his glory is also going to surround his city. Yes, it will. As we look at this last war described in the prophecy of Yahazakaal, we will learn more about how these armies will be numerous, that they will fill the mountains of Yashwa'al and even the valleys. However, they will not be able to go near the beloved city of Yerushalayim, as it is a holy city. He doesn't want any blood. He doesn't want their blood in his city. He's destroying them in the mountains because eventually those mountains are coming down. All right, all those extra mountains in Yashwa'al, they're coming down. There's only going to be one mountain left on the earth, and that is going to be Sayawan, Mount Sayawan. But there must be blood shed. These ones, Allah Hayam is going to use them to appease the earth one more time, one last time. Let's read on. The tabernacle is set upon Mount Sayawan. Allah Hayam Hamashiach is the high priest there. We are his priests, along with our brethren that have been resurrected to life. Therefore, our city will not be allowed to be threatened by these heathens. There's no threat for us. Allah Hayam is drawing them, He is literally drawing them to come into our city to pillage us, to destroy us. But what they're riding to will be their destruction. Allah Hayam is finally getting rid of all the evil on the earth. And this is how he will do it. Utter destruction. There will be a boundary of glory set around Yerushalayim, which they will not be able to penetrate, even if they tried. And before they're able to go any further, Allah Hayam will break out against them. So let's look at Yahazakaal, which is Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 1 again. Therefore, you son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, Thus said Yahweh Alahayam, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and I will turn you back and leave but the sixth part of you. I will cause you to come up from the north parts, and will bring you upon the mountains of Yashwa'al. And I will smite your bow out of your left hand, and will cause your arrows to fall out of your right hand. So we need two hands to use a bow and with arrows. All right. Verse 4, you shall fall upon the mountains of Yashwa'al, you and all your bands, and the people that is with you. And I will give you unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beast of the field to be devoured. Now, does that sound that they're going to surround our beloved city? No, it does not sound like that. It sounds like they're right into our mountains, and Allah Hayam is going to destroy them there. And because he doesn't want their flesh to be rotten in our land, he's going to cause the ravenous birds and the beasts of the field to come and eat them up. Eat all the flesh off their bones. And only left the bones for the buriers to come and bury them. We're going to see that in the study, the next couple of studies. Let's look at Zechariah chapter 2 verse 3. And behold, the angel that talked with me went forth, and another angel went out to meet him, and said unto him, Run, speak to this young man, saying, Yerushalayim shall be inhabited as towns without walls, for the multitude of men and cattle therein. For I, said Yahweh, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be the glory in the midst of her. Where the glory of Allah Hayam is, nothing that is pagan or evil can come near. So these people can't come near us and our beloved city. They will try. That will be the thought in their mind to come and compass our city. But they're not going to get there. As I've said before, the one landmass will be renamed the Yashwa'al after the millennial reign, after this war. All right, after this great war, Allah Hayam is going to rename the whole earth Yashwa'al. The city, Yerushalayim, will be the dwelling place of the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al, and our forefathers that lived before the existence of the 12 tribes for the 1,000 years. So we will all be living together in the city of Yerushalayim. That's how big it's going to be. It's going to be massive. It's not going to be a tiny little city. You see the place that they call Israel today? That little sliver of land? It's not going to be that tiny. No. We're going to cover the breadth of the earth. The length and breadth of the earth. And the few quarters, the 4 quarters on either side will be occupied by the Gentiles. Well, they will no longer be called Gentiles, they'll be called Yashwa'al. The city will be immense, as it will be made up of towns who are also called cities, which are also called cities, but no territories as we once had. So in the time of Joshua, who is Yahushua, when he allotted the territories for the tribes, they had to stay within their territories. That's where they got their land. Each person received a portion of their land within the territory that's called by their forefather's name, whether it's Yehoiada or Asher or Gad or what have you. Okay? But in this case now, We will still have our territories. We will still be dwelling amongst our brethren. But remember, there'll be no more time of marriage and giving in marriage. After the 1,000 years completed, then marrying and giving in marriage and procreating, all that will be completed. That's why it will be cities now. We will be living in cities. The territories kept us within our own tribes so that we maintain our tribes, our lineage within that tribe. But now after the 1,000 years, we don't need that. All right? We don't need it. So we'll have our towns and cities, or towns, or you call them cities, whatever you want to call them. Yet we will have our own allotted place to live, better than what our forefathers had. We see that the final war will be won by Allah Hayam Yahweh when he will turn these armies against each other, while at the same time destroying them with fire, brimstone, hailstones, and torrential rain, according to Yahazakaal's prophecy. Gadriel will be cast into the lake of fire. Finally, he's gone. And the carcasses of his armies will be devoured by the carrion birds and the beasts of the field. He wants to clean the flesh off their bones. No rotten flesh, the stench of it and the disgust of it on his land. No, he wants it eaten away. And they will eat it away in no time at all, because they're going to be hungry. That's why he called them ravenous. That means they're going to be starving. And they'll leave nothing behind but the little bones. Not just little bones, but the bones. They're going to eat everything and be filled with their flesh. What a fitting end to our enemies forever. Hallelujah. What a time to look forward to. And we're going to be witnessing all of this, Yes, we are. We're going to witness the downfall of our enemies, the destruction of the Satans and their armies when they come. Allah Hayam is going to give that to us. And that's why he said to us, persevere, bear up, because the time of my vengeance is drawing near. And when he takes his vengeance on the evil entities in this earth, on this earth, it will be something to behold. And it will be extremely satisfying. All right. And with that, that's the ending of part 4. This is such an amazing study. Part 5, we're going to go into the war of Gog and Magog. We're going to touch a little bit on Yahazakaal, chapter 37, but then we're going to go right into chapter 38. And we're going to focus all of our attention on chapter 38. And we're going to be in the War of Magog for at least 3 studies. It was such a big study. All right. So we're going to conclude with the blessing for Yashwa'al, the book of the Barayam, chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh, Waya Shamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh Panayo Alayak Wayachanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh Panayo Alayak Wayosham Lak Shalawam. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now I'm going to read to you the command of Allah Hayam when he tells us that we need to recite this when we lie down, when we get up, when we go out, and when we come in. It's taken from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5, to Barayam chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. Shama o Yashwa'al, Yahweh Allah Hayana, Yahweh Achad, wa Ahabath Ath, Yahweh Allah Hayak, Bakal Babak, Wabakal Napashat, Wabakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh, our Allah Hayam is one Yahweh, And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that I say, Shalom, Shalom. All praises to the Most High, Abba Yah.